Professor Pallas here with the Week 5 wrap-up for NTD 420 for Spring 2020. Let's begin by reviewing the weekly class survey. This week, our class survey was directly related to the course content for the week. This week, we learned about healthy eating, disordered eating, and eating behaviors. There can be a clear progression from one stage to the next, but it doesn't always happen that way. So the question this week was about a hypothetical person named Lisa, raised in a traditional American household, Italian American household, where she frequently ate family meals that included pasta, fresh vegetables, olive oil, cheese, but minimal fish, poultry, or red meat. And now at age 36, with a body mass index of 23, this young lady is determined to lose weight that she says she gained during pregnancies. She has declared herself a vegan with gluten intolerance, and she's replacing her noon meal with a manufactured vegan health shake. She's also limiting her caloric intake to 1,000 or fewer calories per day. And she's getting up 2 hours early every day to exercise at the local gym, trying to take at least one class every day, 2 classes on days when she can fit them in. 3% of the class felt that Lisa is developing healthy eating patterns. 86% of the class felt that Lisa is developing disordered eating patterns. And 11% of the class felt that Lisa has an eating disorder. There's not a right or wrong answer to this question, and there's clearly more information that we would want to gather. We would want to know a little bit more about her former weight status and her weight history over time to take a look at this. But some of the red flags when you're looking at this would be she was raised in a traditional Italian American household with family meals that followed basically a Mediterranean diet. Pasta, fresh vegetables, olive oil, cheese, minimal fish, poultry, and red meat. So that's the first red flag, is that she was raised on what we recognize as being one of the most healthy diets that there is available to us. She's age 36, so she's done her growth. She has a BMI of 23. That puts her in a healthy weight range, but she's determined to lose weight. She is replacing her noon meal with a manufactured health shake. That's a red flag. She's limiting her caloric intake to 1,000 or fewer calories per day. That's a red flag. She's getting up 2 hours early every day to exercise at the gym, trying to take at least one class, sometimes 2. That's a red flag. So Lisa is making some very dramatic changes to her food intake and her lifestyle. I'm not sure if this is sustainable over time, but I would say she is more likely leaning towards developing disordered eating patterns that, if she's not careful, could evolve into a full-blown eating disorder. Someone who has this type of a pattern setting up is someone who may be at risk for developing orthorexia. Let's take a look at the results of our first class quiz. The average score for this class was 88%, and there were some of you that scored a perfect 100%. Congratulations. I do want to talk just about a few of the concepts in the quiz that I saw people having a little bit of confusion with. One is body mass index. Body mass index, or the BMI, is a calculation using height and weight. That's why we use it, because it's very cheap for us to calculate. We just need to know how tall someone is and how much they weigh. We divide the weight in kilograms by the height in meters squared to get the body mass index. One of the other concepts that the class showed a little bit of confusion over was normal weight obesity. In normal weight obesity, a person is at a healthy weight for their height, but they have high levels of fat. Okay, so think about that BMI. One of the faults of the BMI is that it will say that people who have high muscle mass, because they weigh more, may be classified as obese or overweight, and that may not be correct because it doesn't account for that muscle mass. So for normal weight obesity, the person is falling within a healthful weight range for their height, but they still have a high percentage of body fat. That is what we call normal weight obesity. And finally, the third concept that I saw people having confusion with was the relationship between adipokines, inflammation, and insulin resistance. So let's walk ourselves through this. So adipose tissue is a collection of fat cells, which are called adipocytes. Adipose tissue is pro-inflammatory. It can cause inflammation. The fat cells, the adipocytes in fat tissue, secrete hormones or signaling proteins called adipokines. The one that you may be most familiar with is leptin. So the more fat cells you have, there's the potential for greater secretion of adipocytes, these hormones like leptin. So why would that be dangerous? Leptin helps to regulate energy balance. It inhibits hunger and diminishes fat storage. It works on cell receptors in the hypothalamus. So if you have a lot of fat tissue that is producing a lot of leptin, the leptin is going to tell the hypothalamus, we're not hungry and we don't need to store any more fat. So stop absorbing glucose out of the blood. And so then you end up with high blood glucose levels, and this can spark insulin resistance. Insulin resistance has a relationship with inflammation. Basically, the way that we look at this is we say that the fat cells in the end, it's an endocrine tissue, it's producing hormones, it's producing adipokines. One of those hormones is leptin, which causes inflammation, which can be related to insulin resistance. So when the body becomes less sensitive to insulin and we develop insulin resistance, this can lead to inflammation as well, and we create a very vicious cycle between the inflammation and the insulin resistance. We do have an assignment coming up. It is due March 1st, which is a Sunday at 11:59 p.m. This is an eating observation assignment, and there are a lot of questions, but you can answer a lot of these questions using a table format if you would like to. Questions 1 through 18, you can submit in a table format. Questions 19 through 22, however, are to be answered in paragraph format. And this paper should be written in APA style. I did provide to you on D2L an APA formatted template to get you started in APA style. So it's set up to have the running head, the double spacing, and the correct font and font size, but you want to go back through and double check all of that before you turn your paper in to make sure that you've maintained it. So for this assignment, you're going to journal 3 days of your own eating behavior. And I don't want you to average things. I don't need to say, oh, I had an average of this much ketchup at, between breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the day, or over 3 lunches over 3 days, I had an average of this much salt. I want you to put down as much as you can of the information, because this will help you begin to identify trends, begin to identify outliers, and possibly begin to identify influencers. And the only way that you can identify those things is if you actually have all of those little individual data points. So some of you may be looking at this assignment and thinking like, boy, this is going to be tedious. But this is where the fun comes in, is when you have all that information, you then go through with a highlighter and you start to pull out like, well, how many times did I eat French fries? Or how many cups of coffee did I really have? Or how much ketchup did I use? Or wow, there's a lot of hot sauce I see here when I look at these meals. Or you might see some trends like, oh, I see that I have hot sauce when I have eggs. So who knows what you may uncover, but you may also uncover influencers. You may identify that you eat more or less based on the companionship that you have when you're eating or the location where you are when you're eating. You may notice that you have greater levels of satisfaction if you use a fork and a knife and are seated at a table. You may not have that realization. It's a very personal, individual assignment, but it's important for you to journal out all 3 days of that eating behavior. Many students in the past who've done this assignment have elected to create a table format. They found it easier to record the data and then to analyze the data for trends. But you are welcome to do it however is most comfortable for you. In review, this week we learned about eating patterns. We learned about normal eating, disordered eating, and eating disorders. Many of you may associate eating disorders or disordered eating with anorexia and bulimia, but hopefully you've come to recognize this week that disordered eating patterns and eating disorders can also lead to situations where people find themselves with weight problems at the other end of the spectrum, in that they're weighing far more than is healthy for them. We also touched lightly on an emerging concern called orthorexia. The important things to recognize is that when someone starts to develop a disordered eating pattern, if you can identify that and address it early on, you may be able to prevent them from evolving into a full-blown eating disorder or into simply maintaining a disordered eating pattern that contributes to excessive weight over time. Again, this class is a perspectives class on obesity. So when we look at normal eating, disordered eating, and eating disorders in this class, we're relating them to the likelihood that someone may develop obesity or become overweight. The guidelines for healthy eating, it's important to know what these are. Number one, you want to follow a healthy eating pattern. That means between 3 to 5 meals a day that are spaced out. Most people will eat 3, some prefer 5 small meals. You should be limiting added sugar, saturated fats, and sodium. You want to keep added sugars less than 10% of your total calories and saturated fats less than 10% of your total calories. It's also great to focus on variety, nutrient density, and keep portion size in mind. And one of the best pieces of advice that you can give people is that sometimes the easiest thing to do is not to make radical changes, but to make small, controllable shifts to healthier choices. All right, so what's next in this class? The eating observation assignment is due Sunday, March 1st by 11:59 p.m. I would encourage you at this point in the class to make a commitment to yourself that you're going to stay up to date and on time, getting the textbook readings done, watching the videos, watching the lectures, and reading the assigned journal articles. Make sure that you're completing that weekly class survey. There's not a right or a wrong answer, but this is part of your participation in the class. During week 7, we will be participating in another discussion board, and during week 8, you will be enjoying your spring break. Yay. Thanks so much for your time.